Okay, in the books, the ones that were yesterday. Maybe at the bottom? No. Okay. Okay, never mind. Yeah. So if your question does not get answered, please write a new one and we will answer it. All questions get answered as a promise, money back guarantee. All right. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It's got nothing to do with me, the money, so I should be careful when I say it. Okay. So I'll just start from the top and we'll see what happens. Okay. How do we know the Pali Canon is complete? Thank you. How do we know the Pali Canon is complete? In part because we know things like from Buddhist history, for example, they talk about, for example, at the first Buddhist council, they talk about the things that were recited. So they talk about the five Nikayas and the Vinaya Pitaka, but not the Abhidhamma. The Abhidhamma is left out. And so, and this, of course, is a very ancient text because these have parallels in the various kind of languages and all kind of things. And so we know that, that the parallels, they match each other very well. So for example, the main thing of the Pali Canon, when we're talking about the completeness of the Pali Canon, the main thing we're talking about is the four Nikayas, long discourses, middle-length discourses, connected discourses, and numerical discourses. These are also found in the ancient Chinese translation, through the Sarvastivadin school, through the Dharmakuptaka school, various schools. And these are the parts that are known throughout the Buddhist world. Wherever you travel in the world, these are the main things that are spoken about. Yeah? So this kind of goes back to the earliest times because these schools, they're separated apart not so long after the Buddha. And so whatever is common before that time must be kind of the common core of what the Buddhist suttas are about. So we know roughly the four main Nikayas, and a tiny part of the Khuddaka Nikaya, the fifth Nikaya, is part of it, and then some aspects of the Vinaya Pitaka, because that is the common thing. So when we talk about complete, it depends a little bit about, has nothing been lost? What does it mean to be complete? For example, there are some suttas found in the Agamas. Agamas is in the Chinese translation that are not found in the Pali Canon, for example. So does that mean that they should exist in the Pali? So maybe there are some individual suttas that have not made it into one collection, but made it into other ones. So that is possible. But in general, we know that it is basically the same kind of texts that are in both in all these collections, and therefore we know the Pali Canon is essentially complete. When we say that the Pali is complete, but not the other schools, it's because if you go to the ancient Chinese translations, they come from different schools. So for example, you have the Madhyama Agama, which is you find in Chinese translation, that comes from the Sarvastivadin school. And you have the Sanyukt Agama, also comes from the Sarvastivadin school. But the Dirgha Agama, which is the long discourses, come from Dharmakuptaka school, right? So although they have all the collections, they come from different schools. And so in that sense, it's not a complete collection from one school, if you know what I mean. And you have the, what is called the 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡𝐧 Agama, which is the equivalent of the numerical discourses. That the school is actually unknown. We don't know what school it's from. Some people say it's Mahasangika, and other people say it's a mixture of things, so it's uncertain. So what we have from the ancient Chinese, that actually is a mixture of schools, and that's why it is not considered a complete canon in the same way as the Pali Canon is. So basically we have very good evidence that basically we have a complete Pali Canon now. All right. What does the Buddha think about the extended water fasting for autophagy? How do you pronounce this word? I don't know how to pronounce this word. Extended water fasting is at least 36 hours. Autophagy, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. allows our body to break down and reuse all cell parts, so your cell can operate more efficiently now. What does the Buddha think about this? I don't know. The Buddha doesn't say anything about water fasting. In fact, there's no really thing about any kind of fasting, whether water fasting or food fasting, of any kind in the suttas. The only fasting is the fasting of the hindrances. Hindrance fasting is good. A few hindrances. I would say this is outside of what is not really so much part of the spiritual path. The Buddha is not so concerned about the body. He doesn't really say all that much about the body. He says a few things occasionally, like he says that a bit of walking meditation is good, because it keeps the body healthy, and certain kinds of, bit of eating gruel in the morning can be a good thing for the body, but there's very little about the body. Buddhism is a mental cultivation, a mental thing, and the body is not really that important. So this is up to you. You can do whatever you see fit in this area, as long as you don't kill yourself or do anything dangerous. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, if our thoughts and actions are conditioned from a previous life and there is no self, how do we take responsibility for our thoughts and actions in this life to build better karma? So what you do, it feels like you are responsible, right? It feels like you have choices, and so you use that to make the best choices. Whether ultimately you are making choices or not is that's kind of a philosophical question, but it feels like you're making choices, and so you make choices based on that feeling. Do your best. Whether that ultimately comes down to conditioning from Buddhism or not, that's kind of irrelevant. You just do your best. And then when you do your best and you make good decisions, you make good karma. All right. Wow, this is fast. Very good then. So, dear Ajahn, listening to your response to the question on being othered as an LGBTQ person was very touching in a world where you could have responded in any way. Your choice chose empathy, understanding, and compassion. I was expecting an answer on changing perceptions of those who perpetuate prejudice, discrimination, and cruelty. Instead, your first word was, I understand. As you pause to digest the pain behind the question, it is rare to receive such a non-judgmental and validating response. I would just like you to know that these words are coming from a teacher that I respect greatly and was very comforting. It means a lot to me. Thank you for helping me to breathe a little easier in life, sending lots of gratitude, also sending lots of love to every brother and sister who feels othered in any way. May you be able to make peace with the suffering one day. May your hearts be at ease. I wish you well there. Okay, that is really nice. So that's good. Excellent. So thank you for that nice response. Okay, so this is, so here we go. Okay, book review. So this someone has read the book. Truly a page turner where some beneficial learnings can be derived from every page. The book name, Flowing to Freedom, Joyce Flame. Okay, blessed Adam, can't thank you enough for your teaching. May you be well. Wow, these are really nice questions today. This is great, right? This is wonderful. Okay. All right, dear Ajahn, thank you for your wonderful teachings. I have gained so much from this retreat. I noticed that at the end of these retreats, and sometimes in daily life, I feel strong urges to become a monastic. I am married and don't want to hurt my loved ones. No kids, luckily, and also have such a strong urge to quit my job and just meditate and reflect on my mind all day. But I'm afraid that I'm just being rash if to make these decisions and not sure if I'm ready for renunciation. This whole conflict and thought process is causing me such frustration and sadness. Any advice? Thank you, Ajahn. I predict your cough will get okay. That's a very wise prediction of you then. It gets better, then it gets worse again afterwards. Yeah, what I would recommend you to do is come to a monastery, stay for a while, and it is always different from what you think. Yeah, it is not. It is very hard to know whether you will actually enjoy it or not. Even if you do enjoy these retreats, it's different from monastic life. Let's put it that way. So you don't know. So try it out. Come and stay at Bodhinyana or Dhammasara monastery, whatever is appropriate. And try some other monasteries as well. People sometimes ask me how to choose a monastery, and one of the best ways is to try a few different places to get a feeling for different places. There are two qualities I would recommend that you should look for in a monastery. Two things. Number one, you should look for a place that teaches the suttas. Not a place where everything is based on the teacher, but everything is ultimately based on the teachings of the Buddha. And that includes, of course, the Vinaya, so they practice proper Vinaya, the proper rules for the monastics. Yeah? So a place that has the foundation in the suttas and the Vinaya, the word of the Buddha. Quality number two, a place where you feel at ease, where you feel nice, you feel good. Because if you feel at ease and happy and good in a place, your meditation is going to go well. Yes, if you feel in a place where you feel on edge or you feel judged or you don't feel relaxed, it's very difficult for the meditation to happen. It's important to have a place where you feel good. So instead of coming from some kind of intellectual idea about what is a good monastery, go with your feelings, because this is ultimately what is going to make it work out or not. So that would be my recommendation, yeah, and then see what happens. Dear Ajahn, I'm still confused about conditionality and intentions. So intentions matter but are conditioned. Yes, exactly. One may not be conditioned to listen to the Dhamma and will never get a chance to modify her conditionality. So one's intention may always be unwholesome, resulting in unwholesome kamma vipaka, resulting in unwholesome conditioning, unwholesome intention. So how can one break this vicious cycle if one is not conditioned or fortunate enough to listen to the Dhamma? Many thanks. Exactly. That is the problem, right? This is the problem for some people. And this is what you find, that sometimes you may teach people the Dhamma and they will not understand. They will not listen, and they will say, I believe in a different religion, I'm an atheist or whatever, and I'm not ready or cannot listen to these teachings. And we know that from our experience, that this is the case with many people. Yeah, there's no way you're going to be able to get them out of their way, their views and their way of thinking about the world. So this is why right view is such a fundamental and important thing, and why wrong view is such a really serious trap in our life and in anyone's life. So what this means also, it means that the practice is urgent. Because you don't know what will happen in the future, you may very well fall back into wrong view again. Yeah, we've all had wrong views in the past, and now finally there is an opening. We need to take that opening. Those other people who have wrong view, even though they may not be reconditioned in this life, there probably will come some future opportunity for them as well when they have right view, yeah? And then they will kind of have the opportunity to get out of this mess. But it is indeed, as you say, it is problematic, and the conditionality can trap you for a very, very long time. But there is also natural ways of understanding Dhamma. Some of the aspects of Dhamma can be understood by looking at your experience carefully, right? So for example, things like kamma, the idea that if you live well, you live with kindness, with compassion, understanding, you tend to feel good about yourself. And this can be observed directly. Or if you do bad things, you have bad consequences. So there are things that are not related to, having a refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, but are natural phenomena within your mind that you can observe if you are careful. So those people who don't observe carefully, who don't really follow the way things are, of course, they will have a problem. but it means that it is discoverable, at least in part, yeah, just by observing your own life and observing your own mind, that you can see some of these principles in action, which is helpful. Yeah, so it's not just about getting the Dhamma, it's also about understanding your life in the right way. Yeah? All right. Dear Ajahn, may you please explain more what is cessation of skillful thoughts? I do not understand how cessation of skillful thoughts result in the arising of skillful qualities, so that skillful qualities that have arisen remain. Isn't it the opposite? Yeah, so I think the idea in that sutta is it's not just the idea about the ending of skillful thoughts. It's just really talking about samadhi. It's talking about, what goes beyond the skillful thoughts, what is in addition to skillful thoughts. The skillful thoughts are the foundation, and on that foundation, then you attain samadhi. Yeah, and that samadhi is a skillful quality. That samadhi is a more profound skillful quality than the skillful thought. So from the skillful thought arises the samadhi, which is even more skillful. Yeah, so that's how it works. And then when you come out of the samadhi, because that then gives you a very peaceful mind, it means that when you come out of the samadhi, you will be very skillful after you come out. Yeah, you'll be able to live in a very positive way with people around you. So if you're able to attain samadhi regularly, you will be a very pure person. Your conduct will be extremely pure. So skillful thoughts lead to samadhi, which is even more skillful than the skillful thoughts, and that in turn enables you afterwards to live more skillfully because of that peace of mind and because of the effect of samadhi on your daily life. On top of that, the samadhi will always come with a degree of insight, and that insight will bring with it an understanding of the nature of life, yeah? And of course, that again will enable more skillful actions in the future. The deeper your insight, the more skillful will be your general conduct around other people. Yeah, so something like that is kind of how to understand this. Okay, so again, if I'm not clear or whatever, please feel free to try again with new questions. We'll see what we can do. Dear Ajahn, you mentioned it is a nature of the world to have conflict with winners and losers, and to be skillful, we intend to be kind and act from it. In face of conflict and competition, what is the example of kindness and compassion? Will it help to remove ourselves from the competition? Does it look like passivity? Thank you for clarifying it. It is okay to take part in competition, I suppose, but be ready to lose, right? And if you can deal with losing, then it's not going to affect you. So if you have a clarity about the nature of the world and you are kind of able to lose with and then kind of shrug your shoulders and carry on, it is not such a big deal. But a lot of people do not like to lose. A lot of people win, it's about winning. And of course, then it will create big problems and then it will create real conflict afterwards. So if you enjoy your job and you practice and you kind of work hard, and then things are whatever, and you don't have to see it as a competition either. Yeah, you can see it just as doing your best in the world. And then whether you win or you're better than the other person, well, that's kind of secondary. That doesn't really matter. You just do your best because you enjoy doing your best. And it's always a good idea to do one's best, yeah, because that's that's true for the Dhamma, it's true for anything in life. Doing your best leads to a sense of meaning and purpose. And if you don't, it kind of becomes very half-hearted. So do your best, but you don't need to think of it as a competition. Just think of it as living in a good way, yeah? And then whatever happens is okay. You don't really worry so much because you have done what you can do. That's what I would say. And then live in harmony with people. It's beautiful if we can work together in companies. We can work together in the Buddhist fellowship, and we can have harmony together. it's a great way of living. And I think the best companies, the ones that are most successful, are companies where people work together rather than compete against each other. And they kind of, everyone is kind of pulling together in the same direction. I mentioned this, I think, the other day, where in the Sutta with Anuruddha, Kimbala, and Nandya, kind of the ideal three monks, the Buddha asks them, right, about harmony. Are you living in harmony? And they say, yes. And then they say, well, the way we do that is I put aside what I want to do and I do what my fellows want to do instead. And the idea is that sometimes the harmony is more important than getting the right decisions. Sometimes a worse decision may actually turn out to be better in the long run because it leads to harmony. And the better decision, because if it leads to lack of harmony, may actually the implementation of the decision may be worse. Yeah. So sometimes it's strange how things work. And sometimes you just let go a little bit of your ego, your sense of self, and then actually it turns out better in the long run because everyone is working together. Yeah. So working in harmony is a great skill, rather than always competing with each other. Yeah. All right. Here I've learned. Number one, if you are a devout Buddhist in this life, in the next rebirth, can you be reborn as a Muslim, a Christian, or Hindu, etc.? What does it mean to be reborn as a Muslim or a Christian? Sometimes you get baptized when you get born, and then they call you a Christian. Does that mean that you are a Christian? Not really. Yeah, in your heart, you're still not a Christian. Just because someone baptized and puts a bit of water on your head or whatever, it doesn't make you a Christian. But that's kind of how it is done. And it is kind of really a bit unfair to be kind of forced into Christianity through baptism. Yeah? Religion is something we should choose when we become adults. That's when we should choose our religion, when we can actually make proper choices. A baby just has to kind of accept what happens. So if in your heart you are a Buddhist, even if someone tells you and they baptize you, probably when you become older, you will reject that baptism and you will go back to being a Buddhist again, because deep inside you feel something else. But that is assuming that you come across the Buddhist teachings. If you don't come across the Buddhist teachings, you may feel that something isn't quite right, but there's nothing else to go to. And then you may end up as a Christian, or maybe you become an atheist, maybe you give up Christianity. Who knows what you do as a consequence. So the more understanding you have of the Dhamma, the deeper your practice is, the more powerful will be your tendency to be a Buddhist in the next life, right? And the same is true of those who convert on their deathbed. Yeah, just to get rid of the nuisance. Okay, I convert, and now go away here. And then you go straight back to being a Buddhist again when afterwards. So it doesn't really matter if people convert on their deathbed. I wouldn't worry so much about it. It's just the problem with it is more that people harass people who are dying. That I find is more problematic. Yeah, you should have a nice and peaceful death. You should not be harassed on your deathbed like that. Anyway, question number 2. How does one become a Pacceka Buddha without a teacher? Must a Pacceka Buddha be a Buddhist in the past lives? For example, Venerable Devadatta. Thank you, Alan. May you be well, happy, and peaceful. How does one become a Pacceka Buddha? Basically, it's a bit like becoming a Sambuddha. How does the Buddha become a Buddha? Well, conditions come together in such a way that a person is able to break through and see the truth. This is kind of how you become a Buddha. And that's why it is so rare, because it's difficult for that to happen. And then there's 2 possibilities. Once you break through, like the Buddha, there's 2 possibilities. Either you become a teacher or you don't become a teacher. So the Sammasambuddha is the teacher. The Pacceka Buddha is the one who does not become a teacher. Pacceka means like individual or solitary Buddha. Yeah. So do they have to be Buddhist in the past lives? Not really. What does it mean to be a Buddhist anyway? A Buddhist is what it means is that you probably have practiced good spiritual principles. Yeah, does that mean that you're a Buddhist? I don't know, Buddhists, lots of people who call themselves Buddhists, they're not really Buddhists, but they don't really follow the Dhamma. Yeah, so it's kind of Buddhist or not. This nice saying at the end of the Mahaparinibbana Sutta where what's his name, Subhadra goes to visit the Buddha, and he asks, well, who are enlightened in this world, or how do you become enlightened? And the Buddha says, well, it is, the way you become enlightened, practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. So that is what matters. Are you practicing the Noble Eightfold Path or not? That is the important thing. Yeah. Whether you call yourself a Buddhist, that's kind of irrelevant. How much of the Noble Eightfold Path you practice? Well, the more of it that you practice, the more advanced you will be. And I think the more likely you will then become a Pacceka Buddha in this life, the next life, or whatever. And so, for example, Buddha Gautama, our Buddha, he had an experience as a child of going into a jhana, deep state of samadhi. So quite likely he would have practiced something like that in previous lives, which had enabled him as a child to achieve samadhi. Yeah, so he already had practiced large parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. Does that mean he was a Buddhist in a past life? Probably not. There was no Buddha around, but he did practice Buddhist principles. Yeah, so yeah. All right, but yeah. Good. Let's go on to the next one. Ajahn, wish you speedy recovery from your cough. Thank you. Appreciate and grateful for your great teachings, concise, clear, and elaborative. Planning to embark on Sutta study, can you kindly guide a structured way to pursue this endeavor with metta? Guide a structured way to pursue this endeavor, okay? So the structured way, you can follow, 𝐕𝐢𝐝 has a Sutta class, you know that? 𝐕𝐢𝐝 over here, he has his own Sutta study class, which you can join over the internet. So maybe you can catch up with him afterwards, and you can ask to follow his Sutta class. Or, it depends how structured you want it to be. What you can do at the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, we have courses on the Noble Eightfold Path, the courses on dependent origination, courses on karma and rebirth, and they're all available on the internet. That's very structured and going through the various aspects. You can go to those courses and you can, they have been recorded and you can follow them if you like. I think they're quite good. That's because I happen to teach those courses. So there's a little bit of bias there now. So that is a nice way of starting out. And then there is a nice book by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi called In the Buddha's Words, where he collects various suttas and he groups them according to various categories, and then he kind of explains it with introductions and all these kind of things. That's a nice place to start if you want to study the suttas. And otherwise, there's a large number of sutta studies available online from various kind of teachers. So find someone that you trust, someone you respect, someone you think might give you some good information, and you can listen to those things. And you can continue coming to sutta retreats. That's also a nice way of learning more about the suttas. So anyway, that's a few ideas for you right there. So I wish you the very best of luck. Dear Ajahn, I have a relative who is arrogant, hot-tempered, and refuses to accept any advice from me. I've tried to give in to him, but he still persists on his own way and does not change. Worse still, he may interpret it as a sign of my weakness. Your advice, please. Thank you very much. Gee, it sounds like a difficult person. I don't know what to do with this kind of person. Arrogant, hot-tempered, and refuses to accept any advice. Well, if they refuse to accept advice, don't give advice. This is what I advise. Because if you try to advise someone who is not interested, it's counterproductive to advise. So sometimes we have to let go. One of the problems is our attachment to people. We want them to change. We want them to listen. And when they feel that we are attached to them and we act out of that attachment, very often they will resist and they will not actually be willing to listen to you because they feel that you are acting out of your interest rather than their interest. And they will be partially right about that, yeah? Be partially right because attachment means that we are acting out of our own interest. So the best thing to do is don't act out of your interest. Don't act out of your attachment. Do things only to help the other person. And sometimes that means stop. Don't give any more advice. Let them be arrogant and hot-tempered. Yeah. And if that's what they're going to be, that's what they're going to be. Sometimes we cannot change people, and we have to accept what they do. So let it go for a while, and maybe after a while, new ideas will come up on how you can help them. Yeah. Bring them to an Ajahn Brahm talk, and then say to Ajahn Brahm, please talk about arrogance and hot-temperedness, yeah, and then see what happens with your relative. Maybe they will listen when Ajahn Brahm tells a nice story, and then when they laugh, Ajahn Brahm throws in the pill of wisdom as they are laughing. Yeah, you know about the pill of wisdom? Yeah, you know that. Yeah, so this is kind of why you have so many jokes. That's why Ajahn Brahm tells so many jokes. That's his excuse anyway. Is that when you laugh and your mouth is agape, that he chucks in the pill of wisdom. That's kind of the theory now. So yeah, so just let this person be. Don't worry, and that will be a sign of strength if you can do that. Yeah, because it means that you have the ability to let go. You're showing your strength by letting go, your mental strength, your psychological strength. Yeah. Something like that. And then solutions tend to come down the track. When we let go, that's often when the solutions arise. Strange how that is. As long as you try to find a solution, you're kind of blocking the mind's natural intuition. And because of that, it doesn't really come up. And then you become quiet, you just sit down, you meditate, you close your eyes, and bang, the solution arises. That is the Singapore arrival card. I was just filling it in, and it was saying, "Do you have any coughs, anything?" And I said, "No, nothing." Well, anyway, yeah. So it's usually nothing like. Most of the time, I don't cough. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your teachings. I have learned a lot, and may I put them to good practice after the retreat. Question: how do I accept kindness and generosity to me with graciousness and no thoughts of needing to pay back repaid with kindness I receive? Much gratitude. Yeah, this is it's a good question, because very often we feel a sense of debt when someone gives us something. But the idea here is to learn to give yourself without needing anything in return. Yeah, so never make the giving into a business deal. Just give from your own heart and give to others. And as you do that, you will also start to change your mind, and you will feel less debt gradually, because you operate in that way. You will feel less debt when others give to you. So this is important. And really, other people, when they do give to you, they should give in a pure way. They should give in a way where they don't actually expect anything in return. And those people who do expect something in return, well, maybe you will teach them a nice lesson by not giving anything back, right? Because it will make them think maybe, yeah. Maybe they get a bit upset straight away, but after a while, maybe they will think, and maybe they will understand where you're coming from. So you have to balance this out. Maybe in some situations you do have to give something back because the situation demands that, but you don't always have to follow these feelings. Yeah, and just let it be. The most important thing is that you act in the right way when you give, and as you do that, your perceptions will start to change as a consequence. I feel sad and much pity for animals that are in captivity. I'm no longer able to enjoy zoos and aquariums. Is there a right view with regard to how to view these places of attraction? Thank you. Yeah, it's a good point. Should we really put animals in captivity for people to stare at them? Is that a good idea? And sometimes you can see the pain in those animals. They start doing all these repetitive motions, all this kind of thing. Is obviously under stress, and it does not look right, or does not look good. But on the other hand, there's also the beautiful story that Ajahn Brahm tells about aquariums. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that story. I think it's in his first book, The Opening Door of Your Heart. And that is the story where there's two monks, there's two senior Thai monks in the house of some wealthy people in Bangkok. These are kind of forest monks. They're from the sticks in the northeast of Thailand. Usually very simple, yeah, people with very little education, because that's what it was like to grow up in the northeast of Thailand in the 1950s or whatever it was when they grew up. And so they go to Bangkok, they go to some wealthy person, they have an aquarium in their house. And then one of the monks says to them, isn't that terrible? They're kind of closing off all those fish. They can't swim where they want. They're trapped in this little tank. What a terrible thing it is. And then the other monk replies, well, but think about it a bit further, right? These fish in the tank over there, they have no predators. Yeah, there's no one to kind of eat them, yeah, or to take a bite of them or whatever. Yeah. They get food whenever they're hungry. Yeah, the fish in the wild, they have to look out for food all the time. Sometimes they may not find the food and they go hungry or whatever. The fish in the wild, the water temperature is always fluctuating. Sometimes the water is too hot, sometimes too cold. In the aquarium, always the right temperature there, right? And in the wild, if the fish get sick, well, they just die. In the aquarium, the fish doctor comes, yeah, and kind of doctors them, and they kind of sorts them out. So what is worse? Is it worse to be limited in where you can go and have all of these other benefits? Or is it more better to be open in the open and not have these benefits? And that is an interesting thought experiment. And the comparison in that story with Ajahn Brahm is like the 5 precepts. Yeah, you keep the 5 precepts, you are hindered like an aquarium because of the precept, but actually the liberty you gain from keeping morality is far greater than the restrictions you have on your conduct. And I think similar thing may sometimes be true for a zoo. Yeah, it's difficult to say. Maybe there are some animals who are better off in the zoo, depending on what kind of animal you are, maybe. So it is never as one-sided as we think, yeah? If you are maybe a small little animal who gets hunted in the wild, maybe you are better off in the zoo where you're kind of looked after and the zookeeper hopefully is nice to you, and etc., etc. So it is, it may not be as bad as you think. That's kind of my point. But I think some animals, however, probably are not very well off in the zoo. Maybe, like large animals like polar bear. I think I saw a polar bear in Singapore Zoo once. Is that right? And I thought, gee, what is a polar bear doing in Singapore? And it's kind of talk about being on exactly the wrong place for a polar. Anyway, so that's kind of, so maybe it depends a little bit on the kind of animal, but things are never quite as one-sided as we think, because a life in the wild can be really rough, yeah, and really tough and really difficult, lots of aggression, the strong eats the weak, etc. That's the reality of the wilderness and the wild. Anyway, so it's complicated. As usual, everything is always complicated. There are no simple solutions usually here. Dear Ajahn, many thanks for your wonderful teachings. Is it possible to meditate while lying down and attain samadhi? Yes, it is possible to meditate lying down. It's a little bit tricky sometimes because if you don't have strong mindfulness, you may fall asleep quite easily, but you can meditate lying down. So lie in the posture that you don't normally lie into sleep. So for example, if you lie on your side to sleep, then maybe lie on your back, yeah, for meditation purposes. And this teacher I've been talking about a little bit, Ajahn Ganha, he has visited us quite a lot in Perth, and he was asked, when he was in Perth, he was asked about his posture when he meditates, and he says, oh, he often meditates lying down, yeah, and so people were, well, okay, lying down. And then he was asked, and then what do you do when you, how does the story go again? What do you do when you kind of lie down? He says, I don't do anything yet. Yeah, I mean, well, don't you fall asleep then if you don't do anything lying down? No, that would be doing something, falling asleep. So doing nothing means you're just awake, you don't fall asleep. Like falling asleep is like turning off, right? You're switching off something. He doesn't switch off, so he just stays awake. And he says it's the best posture because you really relax. Yeah, you really relax, you really let go. Sitting posture sometimes can become a bit tense, but lying down is a really easy posture. So you can try that as well, but you may fall asleep. We'll see what happens. Dear Ajahn, was the Pure Land Buddhism shared in the suttas, in the word of the Buddha, or is it blind faith? Pure Land is not in the suttas. Pure Land is a very late development in Buddhism. There are some suttas called what are they called again now? They are called, basically I think in English they're called the Pure Land Suttas. I can't remember now. But anyway, these are very late suttas, and they were written maybe 1,000 years after the Buddha, so not really suttas at all. They're more like other people's ideas that kind of are developments. Originally, it comes from Buddhism, but it has gone a long, long way from the early Buddhist teachings. So I would always try to go back to the word of the Buddha. The Buddha is the teacher, and if it wasn't spoken by the Buddha, it's going to be uncertain. And if it is directly contrary to the word of the Buddha, and I would say, without really knowing much about Pure Land, so I should be very careful what I say, the little things I've learned, it sounds like it is at least in part contrary to the Buddha's teachings. Dear Ajahn, I'm suffering a lot with this duality of whether I should remain hopeful that my grandpa will recover from a serious stroke, or should I just give him the permission to die, like what Ajahn Brahmali says in his talk. So can you guide me? Thank you, Ajahn. Well, I think giving someone the permission to die is never really wrong. Yeah, remember that Ajahn Brahmali, what he says in his talks, as soon as someone was given permission to die, they got better. And that is kind of the point. Because when you give someone the permission to die, it's almost as if they can relax. They don't feel that they have an obligation to live for someone else or whatever. So giving someone permission to die is more like just releasing someone from obligations. Yeah, this is kind of the idea behind that. I think we should all give each other permission to die all the time. Yeah, we should never kind of really hold on too much to other people. And if we do that, then I think we can kind of live more freely as a consequence. So I would say give him permission and be hopeful at the same time. Yeah, that these things are not really contradictory. They actually go together, I would say. And then I think you are doing your duty as the grandchild when you do it that way. And sometimes it is the right time to die. Yeah? Sometimes we have lived long enough. Sometimes we're fed up with life and we have tried done our best. Life has lost its meaning and purpose, and there's just too much suffering and too unbearable. And sometimes dying is okay. Yeah? Buddhism, dying is not the issue. The issue is how we live. That is what matters. Death is a certainty. You're not going to avoid it anyway. Okay, so breathing in and out, experiencing the whole body of the breath, breathing in and out, tranquilizing bodily formations. Experiencing the whole body of the breath is to watch the full process. So does tranquilizing bodily formation mean tranquilizing the breath or the physical body? It means both. The Kaya Sankara and Pasambati. The Kaya Sankara usually in the suttas means the breath, but the reason for that is because at this point the breath is the main thing that remains of the body. Yeah, so that this is kind of how you see the movement of the body, and you see it through the movement of the breath. So the emphasis becomes on calming down the breath. Yeah, the rest of the body will be affected as well, but it really is about the breath at this point. The breath becoming more and more tranquil, yeah, until it almost disappears at a certain point. So the long breath, the short breath, the full breath, Sabbakaya and Patisangvedi, and then calming the breath. Yeah, Kaya Sankara is actually said to be the breath elsewhere. So that is the main meaning there. I find that I do not have enough faith in the triple gem. How do I build up in that so that I can be less fearful of the unknown, future, and unseen beings? All right, so how can you gain more faith in the triple gem? It is by understanding the Dhamma, yeah, whether the Dhamma makes sense in your life, right? What did the Buddha teach? Is it sensible? Does it actually work? Yeah, these are the kind of things that you need to ask yourself. And so the Buddha says often very simple things like if you are kind, it will lead to your own happiness. It will lead to a better life for you. If you're unkind, it has the opposite effect. The Buddha talks about generosity, the power of generosity. Yeah, because it makes you, again, it makes you feel good about yourself if you're generous towards others. One of the ways of knowing that what you do is a spiritual or a Buddhist action or thought or speech is to ask yourself whether it's good for you and for other people. And anything that is good both for you and for others is like a proper Buddhist or spiritual action. Yeah, it has both effects. So when you're generous, it's good for you and also for the other person, obviously. If you're kind, it's good for you and for the other person. If you meditate, it's good for you, but also for others, because the effect of meditation means that it will also spill over into how you treat other people. Yeah, so just keep on studying the word of the Buddha. See whether it makes sense or not. Put it into practice a little bit and see what happens. Yeah, and then gradually, you develop the faith in these teachings. Yeah, hang around good people and see how that affects your life. What are the Kalyanamitas like? Yeah, what are these people in your life? How are they practicing? Yeah. And then gradually you build up this understanding over time as you do these things. After a while, you may come to the conclusion that, as I have done, that this is the meaning of life. This is what life is all about. There isn't really anything else that you would want to spend your life on. These teachings lead to a state of mind where you find the highest kind of meaning. And once you get that, then of course your faith will be very strong in the triple gem. So it is about understanding the Dhamma, really, is what it comes down to. So keep on investigating, studying, keep asking questions. Try to read a few suttas, try to understand what the Buddha is talking about, yeah? Gradually kind of finding your way through these teachings. Yeah, Ajahn, what does the Buddha think about achieving deeper states of consciousness by way of ancient practices? For example, ayahuasca. We're going to do. Ayahuasca is like a drug in South America, and it is one of these consciousness-altering drugs that you can use. And lots of people these days, they travel to South America and they go on these ayahuasca retreats where they kind of get some shaman to give you the right amount of drugs, and you go on this kind of altered state of consciousness trip. I probably illegal in Singapore, I can imagine, so probably shouldn't do it there. But people do these kind of things, and it's getting more and more common these days that people use drugs that are mind-altering. Yeah, like things like LSD and these kind of things are kind of getting a bit back into vogue. And there is a lot of studies in serious universities around the world where these things are being administered to people and then testing and see how the reactions that they have, etc. Is it useful? Well, I know a lot of monastics who started out, before they were monastic, they started out using these kind of drugs, and they had experiences that were so unusual that it actually led them to meditation and the spiritual path. I'm not one of those. I haven't really done much drugs in my life. But there are many monastics who have. That's quite a common thing here. And so sometimes it has that kind of effect, yeah, because it gives you, opens up your mind to something larger, something broader, and then it makes you interested in spiritual practice or whatever. So sometimes it can have a positive effect. But if you are already on the spiritual path, if you're already a meditator, and you're already in this practice, you have something far superior. Yeah, this is really the path. This is where you can achieve something that has a lasting effect on you, and you don't need to depend on external substances, which sometimes can be dodgy, perhaps. You don't know exactly what you're getting or whatever. So you are reliant on something internal, which means you have more control, you know what you're doing, and you can achieve lasting benefit, not just temporary kind of strange experiences. Yeah, so this is far preferable to be on the spiritual path, do this properly, achieve real samadhi. That will be life-changing. Using these kind of drugs is just a temporary high, and then kind of you're out of it again later on. But not really a high, but temporary change of perception. So you're already doing the right thing by being here. So for anyone who's already here, I would certainly not recommend these things. So. Okay. Dearest Ajahn, that's very nice. Dearest Ajahn, that's really good. After listening to your talks, I find myself drawn to the spiritual practice. I would like to allocate more time attending retreats and in-person Dhamma talks, less time in my social justice efforts. Okay? I honestly find it a bit awkward, as I initially was much more interested in advocating for I have been avoiding, for I have been more interested in advocating for I have been avoiding. Okay. However, after being gladly brainwashed by you, I accept that I am truly powerless in changing the system. Forget about it and say goodbye to your social cause. This thought arose. As much as I love helping for the cause, I firmly believe in, I also love to turn inward. I appreciate your wise view, Ajahn. Thank you very much. Well, you don't have to make a choice. Yeah? You can do both. Because if you do advocating for a good cause and you're doing it in the right way out of compassion, it is really part of your spiritual practice. Yeah, you can make it part of your practice. And so maybe you can change your priorities a little bit and lean a bit more towards going inward and a little bit less outward. That is okay, but don't make drastic changes. Allow things to happen naturally. Yeah. Sometimes if you make drastic changes, you may regret it afterwards. So allow things to happen quite naturally. Yeah. So shift a little bit and see what happens. And if that is good, shift a bit more, yeah? And then feel your way through and see what happens as a consequence. Come and stay in our monastery for a while, right? Come down to Perth, hang out with Ajahn Brahm and the monks, go to the Masala monastery, hang out with the nuns for a while, try other monasteries, whatever works for you, and then build up these things stage by stage and see what happens. And then I think you will find the right balance. There's nothing wrong with advocating for social justice. The most important thing is to do it in the right kind of way. Yeah, you want to advocate for social justice. Don't do things out of anger. I don't think that you're an angry person. You don't sound like an angry person, but sometimes people do it out of anger. And then, of course, it becomes opposed to the spiritual practice. Then it becomes problematic. But as long as you do it out of compassion and kindness, there is no opposition there between the two now. Yeah? All right. Yeah, Ajahn, I understand that there can be good desire. I wonder what kind of desire can be good desire. Is it desire without attachment? Thank you very much. So the good desires are desires like wanting to practice the spiritual path, right? It's a kind of good desire. wanting to come down here at 6 a.m. in the morning and sit with your closed eyes and just enjoy the nice peace and quiet. Yeah, it's kind of a good desire. Bad desire is to break your precepts. Yeah, that's kind of bad desire here. So the problem with desires is that you cannot usually give them up all in one go. So you have to go via the good desires to come to the end of desire. There's like a hierarchy of desires. So you start off by giving up things that are bad for you, and that is, really bad conduct. You have bad breaches of morality. You start with giving that up, and then you give up and lesser bad conduct and intermediate bad conduct, and then you give up the kind of really refined bad conduct, stage by stage, yeah? And in each case, there are some desires left, but you accept those desires temporarily until you can go further down the track, yeah? And so you move your desires into the area of wanting to be kind, right? To be able to be kind, you have to have some attachment and some desire to the idea of kindness. You have to have a bit of attachment to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, right? To these things. And when you have that attachment, that will allow you to eliminate the lower kinds of attachment. Desire without attachment, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to give up all attachments in one go either. Desires and attachments come together. So you have a hierarchy of desires, you also have a hierarchy of attachments. You let go of the attachments to doing bad things, and you have a bit of attachments to doing good things. And then gradually you move out of this whole thing here. When it comes to meditation practice, that is where you want to give up as much desires as you can, because in meditation practice, desires are going to be problematic, yeah, because desires is what moves the mind, and you want to be still in meditation. So, but in daily life, some desires are necessary to even move you around, to make them wholesome, good desires. So, what about sensual desires? Yeah, desires in the sensual realm. Yeah, okay. Make sure you keep your sensual desires within the realms of morality. As long as you do that, you can have some sensual desires. As your meditation deepens, your interest in the sensory world is gradually going to fade away because you have something else to replace it. If you haven't got something else to replace it, then you need a bit of happiness in the five sense realm to make life meaningful. So substitute gradually. Don't do any kind of drastic changes, because that usually doesn't work. And as you change, you go more into meditation, you give up a little bit more in the sensory realm. You become less interested in, I don't know, Netflix or whatever it is. I've never watched Netflix, I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's just films, right? It's just kind of TV, movies on demand or something like that. So you remove yourself a little bit from that world. We had an interesting question just the other day in the interviews, and someone was saying, oh, how can I kind of move away from using my mobile phone too much or something to that effect. And sometimes you have to understand that some things are so addictive that actually it is very hard to give up unless you take a more drastic step. So not always should you wait till it comes naturally. Sometimes you have to take more drastic steps. Sometimes with your mobile phone, okay, after 9 o'clock, give it to your partner so they can lock it up for you until next morning, yeah? And then you won't be able to touch it for a few hours, which is sometimes good. Sometimes you need those strict kind of rules or strict way of doing things to be able to let go, because it's just too hard, it's too addictive. Yeah, there's all kinds of drugs in this world, and the smartphone is one of those modern drugs, hard to let go of. So sometimes if you want to be serious, we have to be strict in that particular way here. So something like that. What's the Buddha's view on masturbation? It is. This is within the realms of, remember, the point here is what are the 5 precepts, right? And the 5 precepts are about not using sexuality in a bad way. Yeah? So masturbation is a private concern. It doesn't really hurt anyone else. And so it is not really bad as such. So in Buddhism, it is not a big problem, masturbation. Which is kind of interesting, because if you go to some other religions, these things are considered bad, yeah, or should be avoided. But in Buddhism, this is just considered a pleasure, and pleasure in its own right is not bad. Buddhism is not anti-pleasure, which is great, yeah. However, of course, if you down the track and you want to really get into deep meditation, these things kind of often fall by the wayside. You're no longer so interested in these things. And the reason you're not interested is because you understand that they can become a hindrance in the practice. But that is often way down the track, yeah, well, as you really can become, are moving towards deep meditation. So this is one of the nice things about Buddhism. There's no kind of guilt or around sexuality. Sexuality is okay. This is one of the things, we're born as humans. This is one of the enjoyments that we are allowed as human beings. Yeah, it is fine. Of course, if you become a monastic, it's a different thing. Yeah, then of course these things are changed a little bit. But certainly as a layperson, this is not a problem. So, yeah. All right. What does living well mean? It is vague. Everyone has a different ideas of what life well lived is. I understand Ajahn keeps encouraging us to focus on developing our inner qualities. What are the optimal way to develop our inner qualities according to the Buddha? Your advice is much appreciated. So living well means to live according to the Noble Eightfold Path, yeah, to the best of our ability. So what does that mean? The Noble Eightfold Path, right? We have the ideas of morality, right action and right speech. What are right action and right speech? There's three kinds of right action: not to kill any living beings. Then there's also the opposite, which is actually having compassion towards living beings. So we don't do the bad, but we do the opposite good side at the same time. Not stealing. Second noble one, the opposite is generosity. Yeah, don't steal, you're generous. All of this is living well. Sexual misconduct, you don't do sexual misconduct, you don't hurt other people through sexuality. And then the opposite of that is more like meditation practice, giving up the sensory realm. Yeah, this gives an idea of what living well means. Speech, don't lie, be as truthful as you can, be direct, be honest about things. Don't talk divisive speech that divides people apart, telling this person about what that person did, oh, they are really bad. This is divisive speech. Instead, bring harmony into the people around you. Yeah, they did this, well, they had a bad day, of course, this is how things happen, yeah, and don't worry, they are just confused, they have had a bad upbringing or whatever, they're actually okay, deep down they want to do the right thing, yeah, it's good to be the friend and to help them out. You bring people together, you don't exaggerate differences and divisions. This is living well. Don't have harsh speech, yeah, don't speak to people in a way that is gentle, that goes to the heart, yeah, instead of using harsh words and these kind of things. This is living well. Speak things, don't talk too much nonsense in your life, yeah. Speak about things that are generally meaningful. Have Dhamma discussions, talk about how to live well, yeah, these kind of things, yeah. So this is kind of right action and right speech. This is living well. And you try to bring that into your life, into all aspects of your life, your family life, your work life, your life with the Buddhist fellowship, your life on retreat, your whole life, you use these principles throughout your life. This is living well. Yeah? Right livelihood is another factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. Then you start developing your mind in metta, loving kindness, compassion, overcoming anger, overcoming excessive greed. All of these things are about living well there. This is really what it means to live well there. Listen to Dhamma talks. Make sure that you emphasize the idea of right view. Develop your perceptions. Yeah, understand the word of the Buddha. Try to figure out what the Buddha really meant. This is part of living well. Right view is also an aspect of living well in Buddhism. All right, so I hope that helps. And we're going to talk more about inner qualities tomorrow also. We're going to talk more about the idea of metta and these kind of things. Dear Ajahn, it seems like you've chosen the Arahant path instead of the Bodhisattva path. Would you please explain why? What are the compelling reasons we should also choose the Arahant path? From the suttas, I've heard the saying, if everyone is not fully enlightened, how can we say that we are fully enlightened even if we attain enlightenment? I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Thank you. The reason to follow the Arahant path, if you like, is that the Buddha doesn't teach the Bodhisattva path. The Buddha teaches the Arahant path. The Noble Eightfold Path leads you to full enlightenment. It does not lead you to become a Buddha in the future. And the idea of the Bodhisattva path and this idea actually arose after the time of the Buddha. And so then don't come from the word of the Buddha. So it depends on what you follow. If you want to follow the Buddha and you take the Buddha as your teacher, then you should follow really the Arahant path. But if you're happy to follow what someone else has taught later on, then you can follow the Bodhisattva path. The problem is that we don't really know who taught the Bodhisattva path, right? It's very obscure. There isn't any clear authorship of these later suttas. And because of that, it's kind of a bit unsettling to follow a path when you don't know who the teacher is, right? Where does it come from? Were they really enlightened? Did they know what they were talking about? This is kind of part of the problem with the Bodhisattva path. So I always put my faith in the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha. Why? Because the Buddha is like the fountainhead. It's like the beginning, the starting point for Buddhism. And if the Buddha didn't have it right, well, then we have a really serious problem. So we all have to assume that the Buddha had it right. And so because of that, that is why we take the Buddha as a primary teacher, because our assumption has to be that he understood what he was talking about. He had a real insight into the nature of reality. So this is why the Buddha's word stands out within Buddhism as the one thing that we should all really have confidence and faith in, whereas everything else is more unreliable. Yeah, so this is why the Arahant path is right. And through practice in the Arahant path, you become an example for other people. Someone who practices the Arahant path, I would say, is, I remember Ajahn Brahmali was once told by someone who was practicing the Bodhisattva path that he was more of a Bodhisattva than most people who practice the Bodhisattva path. Yeah. Why? Well, because he was doing so much for the Buddhist world. Yeah. And this is kind of the idea. If you really practice the Arahant path properly, generosity is an important part of that. You give of yourself as much as you possibly can. It doesn't mean that you are selfish because you practice in the Arahant path. In fact, selfishness goes against the whole idea of Dhamma. So, of course, you're not going to be selfish. And also the idea of waiting for everyone else to become enlightened, as you suggest here. How can we say that we are fully enlightened even? I've heard it said that if everyone is not fully enlightened, how can we say that we are fully enlightened even if we attain enlightenment? In other words, I think you're saying that you want to bring everyone else along, otherwise it's not the real deal. The problem is that waiting for everyone else to come along, it may never happen. The world probably doesn't operate like that. If that was possible, it would have happened already a long time ago, right? The universe has been going for countless eons. There have been countless Buddhas in the past. If that was to happen, it would already have happened. So I think that is not how the world works. You're never going to get everyone along. It's just impossible. So the best way to encourage others is to become enlightened yourself, to become a beacon for the world. People see the Dhamma in you, that will attract others. But if you are a Bodhisattva and you don't understand the Dhamma properly because you haven't actually attained anything yet, you won't be the same kind of beacon. And for that, the reason you will attract less people, and actually I think less people become enlightened if you practice the Bodhisattva path. That I think is the paradox. All right. Let's go on to the next one. Dear Ajahn, I wonder how would you live your life if you were a layperson? How would you practice and reprioritize your life and why? I don't know. I think I would probably be a terrible layperson. One of the things I like about the monastic life is that it is very supportive for the spiritual path, right? You get to hang out with Ajahn Brahmali, you get to live in a nice monastery with a 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡 in the forest. You get really nice support from the lay community around you. It's a wonderful privilege to be able to live the monastic life. And I think as a layperson, I would probably be sitting at the back of the room there somewhere, kind of not knowing what to do with myself. I don't know what I would do. But I find it incredibly supportive. So I can't even remember anymore what it's like to be living as a layperson. It's so long ago. And I've been a monk now for almost 30 years. It's kind of becoming very lost in my kind of memory what it is like. What would I do? Don't know what I would do. No idea. I don't ever think about those things. It's not really something that I consider anymore. So the answer is don't know. I guess I would just. I guess what I would do was try to use some of the principles that the Buddha lays down in the suttas for making good decisions in your life. And the Buddha always says that we should make decisions based on the idea, how do we get maximum growth in good qualities, and how do we minimize the bad qualities in our life? This is how we make decisions. And so I would choose a job, hopefully, according to that criteria. How can I maximize my good qualities and minimize the bad ones? What does that mean in practice? Maybe it would mean a kind of job where you're providing a service. I mean, some people here are doctors. I think it's wonderful to be a doctor because potentially you can provide so many benefits for people around you. Or a teacher, another beautiful job, helping others. And so there are many service jobs like that that are really beautiful. And I would try to avoid some of the bad jobs, obviously. And maybe I would try to avoid jobs that are too stressful, because if you get too stressed out, you lose your bearings a little bit, and you become grumpy, and you become negative, and you start saying bad things, etc. If I was to live a lay life, if I had to choose a partner in lay life, I'd probably choose someone who had at least some basic values in common with me, so that you have you're pulling in the same direction. I think that would be an important point. That would be probably much more important than anything else. You choose a partner. Sometimes we choose partners for all the superficial and stupid reasons. Choose someone for some really good reasons, similar kind of values, so you can actually practice together. And then where would I live? That's a good question. What about what's a good place to live, to practice Dhamma? Don't know. Antarctica, maybe? Far away, nice and peaceful. You just kind of hang out with the penguins. Anyway, I don't know. So I think that is roughly how I would think about things. How make choices according to what would be most beneficial for living a good life, a spiritual life, and then act accordingly. Something like that. Okay, I am a firm believer in the Buddha's teachings. Good. However, I prefer not to subscribe to any teachings and rule out others. Any teachings and rule out others. There are other enlightened beings, such as 𝐻𝐸𝐴𝐻 Tolle, Nisargadatta, and Ramana Maharshi. Are there? Are you sure? How do you know that? It's a nice point of view, but are you absolutely sure? Anyway, I wonder if Ajahn has considered teachings that also raises the level of consciousness from legitimate enlightened beings other than the Buddha, and also wonder what might the Buddha think. Many things, Ajahn. Hope you recover earlier than expected. Okay. So this gets very tricky, right? Because you're talking about enlightened beings. You're stating here that people like 𝐻𝐸𝐴𝐻 Tolle, Nisargadatta, and Ramana Maharshi are saying that they are unenlightened beings. But enlightenment is very profound. And it is very difficult to know who actually is enlightened. What does it mean to be enlightened? Yeah, and the Buddhists have one view of this, and if you go to the Hindu tradition, they will have a different view. And enlightenment means different things in these traditions. And so I would argue that some of these spiritual teachers you are mentioning here, they are maybe quite impressive. They have many good qualities. They have some really good things going on. But I would say they are not enlightened from the Buddhist perspective. But, you know, one of the things about the Buddha that you have to remember is that he grew up and he lived in a certain culture. It's a Brahmanical culture. And the Brahmanical culture had this idea of the universal consciousness. Yeah, the idea of like Brahman, yeah, the kind of God and the universal consciousness, and then how the Atman and the Brahman become one when you die, and these kind of ideas. But the Buddha, one of the things the Buddha did, he actually went against those ideas, and he said, "This is not, you haven't gone deep enough." Yeah, yes, there are such things, you can experience universal consciousness, but the Buddha said it is just another rebirth, and it will last for a very long time, but then you come out of it again. It is just another experience. So the Dhamma of the Buddha is actually very profound, that it is in opposition to many of these ideas of Brahmanism. So you talked about Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi, and these, especially Ramana Maharshi, is in many ways a very impressive saint. Yeah, you can see some of the videos of him on the internet and these kind of things. But and he obviously had some very profound things going on. But whether he was fully enlightened from a Buddhist point of view is another matter. Eckhart Tolle, I don't even, you know, Eckhart Tolle again is a completely different thing again. He seems to have also had some nice experiences, and he himself may call that enlightenment. But what does it mean? Because it is just a personal experience that he has. He calls it enlightenment, but that's not really enough to say that he is enlightened from a Buddhist point of view. Yeah, he had something positive happening in his life. Good for him. But whether that's enough to really make an end of rebirth and all these things, that's a completely different thing. Yeah? There are degrees to all of these things, right? And that is kind of the point. So don't jump to conclusions too easily. These are really profound matters, very difficult to know, very difficult to judge. And the Buddha had a particularly profound idea of enlightenment. This is the idea of dependent origination, right? Where you find the middle way between eternalism and annihilationism. This is what makes the Buddha's teaching so unique and so special. So, yeah, so I would say keep on investigating, yeah. Keep on looking at these things. Try to really understand the Buddhist teachings deeply. Yeah. And as you understand, you may actually start to change your views on these matters, and you start to see that actually it is not as simple as many people being enlightened. Some are more enlightened, some are less enlightened, and there is full enlightenment, which means the end of rebirth, and there's the lesser enlightenments. We are still trapped in rebirth, still trapped in samsaric existence. All right. Dear Ajahn, many years ago, before coming in contact with the Dhamma, I engaged in sexual misconduct, an affair outside my marriage. The suffering was immense, feeling sorry for our families, and self-forgiveness is tough. Can you speak a little on forgiving oneself? I'm grateful and mindful never to do it again, and it has been grounding. All right, so this is a very common thing in the world. This kind of affairs outside of marriage is really, really common. I think there are some statistics on this, and it's like half of all people indulge in this kind of thing. It's a very common thing here. And the reason is because the temptation is often very strong, especially if it is easily available, then it's very strong temptation to do this kind of things. So remember that this is a very powerful drive in human beings, and because it is a very powerful drive, it is very easy to kind of be overtaken by these drives. They're very strong and very difficult to keep in check. And you need a very strong right view to be able to stand your ground. Yeah, and as we're saying here, this was before you came into contact with the Dhamma. You probably didn't really know what you were doing. Yeah, it just seemed like, okay, it just seemed like something fairly innocent. And when you are in the grip of these kind of cravings, your mind gets incredibly distorted. The craving will tell you that what is not acceptable is acceptable. Yeah, this is the nature of craving. It distorts the nature of reality. So you are just in the grip of delusion, yeah, in the grip of some very powerful forces, and you are the victim of those forces. And those forces then make you do things that ideally you should not do. So again, remember non-self. Remember that we are all victims of these habits from the past, the very strong drives within us. And when you understand that, then you will have a far more forgiveness for yourself. Yeah, it is not. Many of these things are just, they happen, and it is just kind of nature almost doing its things despite our desire to be moral and to live in a better way here. So please don't be hard on yourself. And I would say, even if you killed somebody, and this is very small compared to killing someone. Killing someone is quite a serious thing, right? Obviously. Sexual misconduct is much lower down on the scale of bad conduct. But even if someone killed somebody, like Angulimala, for example, right, killing lots of people, he became an arahant afterwards. Why? Because he forgave himself. He realized he had made a mistake. Let go, forgive, and then move on from that. So even killing can be forgiven, let alone sexual misconduct. Yeah, so that's kind of how to think about it. Think about it as non-self. Think about it as being out of your control. Okay, you have learned your lesson. You want to do it again? Well done. Yeah, you're on the right track. Yeah. Ajahn, thank you for the teachings. Can you recommend a starting place to get into the suttas and the Buddha's stories? Thank you. So I did talk about this before, about how to read the suttas about in the Buddha's words, and these book by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, which can be got online, can be bought at the Buddhist Fellowship. Do you have it there, Eileen? No? Okay, and anyway, it can be got online quite easily as well.
Kindle also.
It's also on Kindle. Okay, so Kindle also. Okay, so it's available. Just okay. So good. And so that's a good starting point. Also, good idea to listen to some sutta readings by someone who can explain the suttas for you, because initially it may be quite hard to understand the suttas. So good to have someone to help you explain what is going on, at least to start out, and after a while you gain your kind of footing and you know what to do, and you can read these things on your own much better after a while. Or you can join Yutong in his course on the Dhamma and just check out the various possibilities. Anyway, I did respond to this mostly before, so I'll carry on. We don't have all that many questions left. That's good news. Here, Ajahn, in Mathematical 28, Venerable Sariputta said, the desire, adherence, attraction, and attachment for these 5 grasping aggregates is the origin of suffering. Who, what is desiring, attaching to the 5 aggregates? Okay, so it is the 5 aggregates that desire themselves. That's really what it comes down to. Desire is an aspect of the 5 aggregates, and that aspect of the 5 aggregates attaches to the 5 aggregates. Yeah? If you feel yourself, if you have a desire, what is that desire inside of you? Well, part of it is perception. Yeah, you're perceiving something as worthy of desire. Part of it is maybe a movement of the mind towards that. That is like sankhara, or the will. Yeah, there's a will aspect to it. There's a feeling that goes with it. If what you desire sounds nice, which obviously it will, there will be a nice feeling going with it. There will be awareness going with it. So that if you look at it, the 5 khandhas will be there when there is desire. Yeah, it is a particular kind of the way the 5 khandhas come together. This exists in the 5 khandhas themselves. It is said that we consists of 5 and only 5 aggregates. If so, is greed and hatred any one of these? Yes, it is a particular configuration of the 5 khandhas. Does it fit into the teaching of the 5 khandhas? Yes, it does. It is part of these 5. Particular configuration of the khandhas is what desire is. And that desires itself, so to speak. Yeah? It desires the aggregates. It desires your existence. It desires continuation in a certain way. Okay, we're doing really well, actually. This is good news. So let's see. Carry on for a few more minutes and see if we can come to the end of the questions. Dear Ajahn, how do I rein in my critical and judging mind? I don't want to, but I'm aware that I seem to be doing that spontaneously. Please advise. Thank you. So you rein it in by this whole idea of understanding how conditioned people are, how actually they are what they are because of habits from the past. They often can't change themselves. They are trapped in their habits and all of these kind of things. And you can move, I would say, probably quite easily from being critical and judgmental to being compassionate instead. It is not that difficult to do, and I guarantee you that you can do it if you try. Yeah, so you look at people in a slightly new way. Instead of thinking that they are stupid and bad and they are doing stupid things, remember they are trapped, and that is why they're doing the way things they're doing. And so are you. You're also trapped, and you have kind of proven the point by this note. Yeah, you are trapped in being critical and judgmental, and you find it hard to get out of it. This proves to you that we are all trapped to a large extent. So are you. But if you do put your mind to it, because now you have a different viewpoint, guarantee you will also be able to get out of it as well. That is the good news. Yeah, so with the right guidance, we can all get out of our habits, but it takes a while. Remember the simile of the supertanker. Habits are very strong. They have a very strong momentum from the past. So it takes quite a bit of time sometimes and perseverance to get out of these things. So best of luck. Dear Ajahn, if there is a time machine and we go back to the time when you first encountered the suttas, what was the turning point that led you to be so interested in the suttas to the extent that all suttas are your favorite suttas? Honestly, I find sutta boring and dry. Hope to gain inspiration from you. By the way, I find Anattanisvara's version easy to read than Bhikkhu Sujata's. Okay. Well, try a bit of both, right? And see what happens after a while. Do you mean Bhikkhu Bodhi's Anattanisvara? Maybe you mean Bhikkhu Bodhi. You can also try Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations. They can also be quite nice. So see what works. I think what made me interested was because I really wanted to understand Buddhism. Yeah, I was a disciple of the Buddha. I was becoming a monk, and I wanted to know what on earth does the Buddha teach. I am his disciple. For goodness sake, I need to find out. And so I started to read. And I was very lucky because I had a teacher like Ajahn Brahmali. And in the early days when I came to Bodhidharma Monastery, Ajahn Brahmali would teach the suttas. He doesn't do that so much anymore, but he did that back in the mid-90s when I started out being Ajahn Brahmali's disciple. And I was really impressed with the way he taught the suttas. He would take a sutta, he would bring in other suttas and show how they illuminated this sutta and show how it was all like one picture, one tapestry, one understanding of the Dhamma. And that really got me inspired to read the sutta. I wanted to understand, what is this practice? One of the dangers of having just a teacher is that a teacher will often have an idiosyncratic view of teaching the Dhamma. They will come from their point of view. Someone like Ajahn Brahm, who is very skilled in samadhi, will tend to emphasize samadhi practice. Sit back, close your eyes, wait, and bang, the mind goes into samadhi. That's basically Ajahn Brahm's teaching, right? And for some people that works. And for some people, if you really can do that, it will actually happen. Because if mindfulness is strong, the mind will lead automatically towards samadhi. But when I started out, I needed something more, yeah? And so I started to read the suttas, and you get all the beautiful information about how to be moral, how to be kind, how to be generous, how to live your life in the right way, how to think in the right way, how to overcome your defilements, etc. I found that incredibly useful, and I needed that, and I have become a much better person as a consequence. Yeah, and so actually the Buddha gave me all that information. So thank you, Buddha, for helping me. Right, this is kind of how you feel when you do these things. And so it is about how you read the suttas, what attitude you have, what you're looking for when you read it. That is, yeah, so enjoy it. If you don't enjoy the suttas, don't read them. But sometimes what you have to do is just flick through the book and find the sutta that you like. Yeah, or find a particular compilation of the suttas, or listen to talks about the suttas that describe the suttas well. Someone who can bring the suttas alive and make them meaningful in your life. Yeah, that is what you want. So there's different ways of doing this. Okay, I'm going to finish off the questions. A few more, so it's going to be a little bit later than usual, but I'm going to finish it off so that I'm following my promise. Is there a shortcut? Oh, this is something to evaluate what someone says. Is it the Buddha's teaching or not? My thought is asking the question whether this brings stress or relieves stress. My thought is asking the question whether it's related, since the Buddha's reading is very pragmatic. If what the person says does not relieve stress, surely this is not the Buddha's teachings. What do you think? Okay, I see what you mean there. Sometimes when we listen, is that what it says? Listen to a sutta, and we might not have the time to check the sutta during the interaction or something like that. All right, so this is like a shortcut to know whether it's the real teaching of the Buddha or not. Does it relieve stress or does it not relieve stress? You obviously have been reading Ajahn Brahmali's translations using the word stress, I'm guessing. So does it relieve suffering? Someone might say. And yes, you can say that that is the case. But sometimes there is a little bit of short-term suffering for long-term happiness, right? So you can argue, for example, that keeping the 5 precepts may be a little bit of short-term suffering. There are certain things you cannot do, right? And that means holding back. For example, sometimes you may want to lie, but then you think, okay, so I better not lie because it is against the precepts, and that may go against what your ego wants, and it may be painful for a very short period of time. So it depends a little bit what you mean by that. Yeah, it is. You have to have a long-term view about what relieves stress or not. Another example would be, what about the idea of a creator God? Some people believe in a creator God, and they would say that makes them happy because then it's like having someone who looks after you or whatever. It makes you feel less stress. But in the long run, it may not be a good idea, because what if there is no creator God? What if that actually turns out to be false, and then actually you have a problem? So you have to use that idea carefully, yeah? And so it is not just about what relieves stress and suffering, it is also about the bigger picture of what works and what does not work. Ajahn, what are your thoughts on open awareness meditation? I would love to hear your reasoning. Also, have you tried practicing it? Why and why not? So open awareness meditation, I think this is something that sometimes people do. Maybe this is like having your eyes open and just kind of having open awareness, not doing anything in particular, not focusing on anything, something like that, just being peaceful with whatever. What we need to do, the idea, what we're trying to achieve on the Buddhist path. The Buddhist path ends in Samma Samadhi, which is like the jhanas, which is samadhi. Without that samadhi, you cannot see things in accordance to reality. This is what they have in the suttas again and again and again. Samadhi leads to yata bhuta nanadasana. You have to have samadhi to see things in accordance with reality. So we should ask ourselves, what leads to samadhi? Okay, what leads to samadhi is samasati, right mindfulness. Samasati is essentially watching the breath and then unifying the mind and achieving samadhi. What leads to samasati? Okay, what leads to samasati is basically morality, yeah, living well. Yeah, so you want to live well, you want to live with kindness, you want to develop your mind in metta, in compassion, overcoming anger and these kind of things. That is what leads to a really complete idea of sila and kindness. So this is what we're trying to do. Be as kind as we possibly can, based on that, plus right view, based on that, meditate, and then achieve samma samadhi, which will allow you to see things in accordance with reality. That is the basic outline of the path. So if you can fit open awareness into that somehow, then you can do open awareness meditation. If you find that it makes you a better person, if you find that it makes you more able to watch the breath afterwards, if you find that it makes you peaceful, right? If it has any of these beneficial effects that leads you on this general trend, then you can do it. So you should always ask you, what is the purpose? Does it serve the purpose of moving the path forward? If it does, then it is a good thing to do. So do I do it? No, I don't do it. Because why not? Because I have, I just follow what works as far as my practice goes. Be kind, watch the breath, and then, that kind of works for me. So that's what I do. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you have to make sure that it leads to those results that take your path forward. Okay, we are meaning-making creatures. There is no meaning to anything except the meaning that we give. Therefore, bowing, as with any behavior, does not have any inherent meaning. If we are truly respectful to the Buddha's inner qualities, whether to bow or not is not necessary. It seems like a ritual. By saying this, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the Buddha. I'm someone who is inclined to logical thinking and is a healthy skeptic like Ajahn. I wonder if the meaning given to bowing is written in any of the suttas. Thank you, Ajahn. Yes, I mean, you are in large part right in what you're saying. Bowing, you either give it meaning or it can be meaningless depending on what we do with it. So that is very important. And just to bow for the sake of bowing in an empty way doesn't really make much sense to me either. I fully agree with that. But again, the reason I personally like bowing is because I feel that when I bow to the Buddha, I'm actually developing the qualities of the Buddha. Because what I bow down to is like wisdom. It's kindness, it is caring, it is samadhi, it is stillness, it is all the beautiful qualities of the Buddha. And by bowing down to them, it is almost like you're opening up your heart to those qualities. There's a certain humility in bowing down, right? If you bow down in the right way, it is like you are lessening your ego a little bit. And the ego tends to get in the way of developing spiritual qualities. So if you bow down with the right attitude, actually, it can be a very beautiful thing. And it can open up your heart in a new way, allow beautiful qualities to develop. So it depends how you do it. If you find it too difficult and you find that bowing just kind of gets in the way and it doesn't work for you, whatever, then don't do it. But try occasionally to bow down, yeah? Try it in private when no one is watching, yeah? And see what happens. And you may find that suddenly one day something happens and you realize, actually, I'm lessening my ego by doing this. Yeah, it is opening up my mind to something new, something I didn't really see before. And the moment you see that, that is when you understand the power of bowing. Ajahn Brahm tells a beautiful story of he was dreaming. And Ajahn Brahm tells, if you really bow down to the Buddha in the right way, you feel bliss when you bow down. Yeah, this is the power of bowing in the right way. And he tells a story when he was sleeping and he was dreaming. And in this dream, he was bowing down to this monk that he really respected. And the bliss was so powerful just from the fact of bowing down to this monk that he woke up straight away, sat down cross-legged, and went straight into this very deep meditation. Right away. Power of bowing, right? Right there. Yeah. So this is, of course, Ajahn Brahm has a very developed mind, but it shows you what can be done through these things when they're done the right way. They're telling me some secrets. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tell them, but anyway, now you know. So, okay. Last question for today. The 8 worldly winds. Is this a myth or found in any suttas? Is it the Buddha's core teaching? Yes, it is found in the suttas. These are called the 8 loka dhammas, the 8 worldly qualities. Yeah, and they are found in this. I think they found in the Anguttara Nikaya 8, probably. The 8 loka dhammas: gain and loss, fame and disrepute, and etc. etc. These are the ones. They are there. So these are the things that trap us in the world, yeah, because they seem very attractive and interesting, but in the end, they don't actually lead to anything positive. So that is all for tonight, and now we get a chance to bow down to the Buddha. Okay, excellent. Let us pay respect to the Buddha. If you don't want to pay respects, you don't have to. So now, this is it.